If you ascribe to the theory that Nintendo always follow a successful console with a dud, then you suspected that the Nintendo Switch would be huge. And you might suspect that the upcoming Switch 2 is going to be a spectacular fall from grace. But we're not here to talk about that, we're here to celebrate the Switch, a console that, despite Nintendo being viewed as well and truly out of the so-called console race by this time, has gone on to be their second best selling system ever, and will likely claim that top spot before all is said and done. Furthermore, it's got one hell of a library. So, I'm Sai, this is What Culture, and here are the 20 best Nintendo Switch games of all time. Number 20, Mario and Rabbids Sparks of Hope. Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle was perhaps the single most pleasant surprise during the Switch's entire life cycle, an exercise in brand synergy which actually had the gameplay and charm to back it up. And sequel Sparks of Hope offers up some welcome improvements to the original's unexpectedly beguiling tactical strategy gameplay. First and foremost, it smartly reworks the combat system, ditching the previous game's grid-based layout in favour of vastly superior free movement in real time, while delivering more open, less linear levels. In fact, Sparks of Hope as an iterative sequel brings a ton of quality of the life fixes to the table, while unexpectedly ramping up the difficulty in genuinely clever ways. Though it can't ever match the genuine shock and awe factor of Kingdom Battle turning out so well against expectations that ranged from mediocre to LOL this is so dumb I can't believe it's real, on balance Sparks of Hope is the better of the two games. And yet despite all of this, it underperformed commercially, leaving the prospect of a third entry a bit of a mystery. Number 19, Golf Story. Right, we've teed up and now we're flying onto the most unexpected of greens, or some kind of golf analogy, I don't know. This sports themed RPG came totally out of nowhere from Sidebar Games in 2017 and immediately charmed players with its quirky story, delightful characters and retro art style fused with deceptively deep golf gameplay. And even if you're not a fan of golf as a sport, the game does a fantastic job of making it entertaining and accessible, albeit while offering a surprising level of challenge the further through the story you get. Though more of a modest commercial success than most games on this list, Golf Story remains a much-loved cult fave for doing something genuinely creative and adorable with the well-trod sports game formula. The Nintendo eShop is full of terrible slop these days, but this is a must-have off the platform, even more so because it's remained exclusive to the system all of this time, surprisingly. Number 18, Tetris 99. Tetris is one of the best-selling video games of all time, largely due to its elegant simplicity. Everyone knows what it is and can get to grips with its core gameplay in a matter of seconds. Tetris 99 quite ingeniously reworked it then into a battle royale framework as players sought to out-Tetris 98 other players in order to be the last one standing. Tetris 99 finds a perfect balance between not encroaching upon the elemental Tetris gameplay too much and yet finding a clever way to make it hyper-competitive in an online environment. Being able to send additional rows over to other players by clearing one of your own is a neat, at times hilariously cruel rib, and yet even in its most frantic multiplayer moments, Tetris 99 never loses the essence of what makes Tetris so compulsively addictive. Its success also led developer Arika to follow up with a slew of other Battle Royale-centric Switch spin-offs, namely Pac-Man 99, Super Mario Bros. 35, and F-Zero 99, which were all clever in their own rights. Number 17, Splatoon 3. Splatoon is one of Nintendo's most inspired franchises to emerge over the past decade, and Nintendo have done a pretty good job of growing it in that time, cultivating a dedicated fan base. I mean, if you're into multiplayer shooters, you typically aren't going to the Switch for them, but that's what makes Splatoon so special. Releasing in 2022, when the era of live service garbage was in full swing and multiplayer-focused games were all too keen to find insidious ways of milking players for more money, Splatoon 3 truly felt like an oasis in the desert. Even accepting that the Switch's online infrastructure lags far behind basically every other platform, Splatoon 3 has proven to be a mostly frictionless experience where online multiplayer is concerned. More to the point, the ludicrously addictive gameplay speaks for itself, both in its competitive multiplayer and a single-player campaign that's once again far more creative and effort-filled than one might reasonably expect. Melding its wonderfully messy paint instead of bullets gameplay with a gorgeously colourful art style that just sings on the Switch, Splatoon 3 feels like the ultimate rendition of the series, until the next one anyway. Number 16, Ring Fit Adventure. Nintendo are often criticised for being gimmicky. Remember Labo? Remember the living room Mario Kart thing? Let's just say they're not on this list, but for every few attempts that don't necessarily land, we get a Ring Fit Adventure. And there are few better examples of perfect timing in video games than Ring Fit Adventure releasing near the end of 2019, mere months before most of the world would be forced to shelter amid the global pandemic. People couldn't get to gyms, so as they turned to home workout solutions, Nintendo's exercise-premised RPG became a hot commodity, enough so that copies ended up selling for hundreds of dollars on sites like eBay. Ring Fit Adventure so brilliantly mastered the act of gamifying exercise, of taking potentially mundane physical activity and filtering it through the prism of a dopamine-delivering RPG. Getting a sweat on while battling bosses was a hugely novel concept, and that the game was also a genuinely fun genre offering in its own right proved a hugely pleasant surprise, all the more so for a game few had on their radar pre-release. The game's general accessibility, combined with its incredibly inspired use of both the Joy-Cons and its bespoke Ring-Con peripheral, ensured Ring Fit Adventure arrived at just the time when everyone needed it most. Number 15, Bayonetta 3. Even taking into account that Bayonetta 3 is generally accepted to be the weakest entry into the iconic character action franchise, it's still an absolute corker of an action-adventure romp by any conventional metric. I mean, it's like picking the least attractive slice of chocolate cake. It's still chocolate cake at the end of the day, and I love chocolate cake. Moreover, the fact that Bayo 3 exists at all feels like nothing short of a miracle, given that the second game was a sales flop on the Wii U. But the 8-year wait was most certainly worth it, with Bayonetta 3 largely reaffirming why the series is so beloved, with its unforgettable central character and fluid, dynamic combat. Bayo 3 upped the ante by featuring larger, more expansive levels and introducing the nifty Demon Slave and Demon Masquerade mechanics, all of this making up for the fact that the game was less than stellar performance-wise. But hey, the Switch, through its 8-year life cycle, largely succeeded on the strength of Nintendo's first-party offering, so Bayonetta 3 was one of those rare games that attracted people to the system who aren't necessarily fans of what the big N produced themselves. Hopefully we won't be waiting quite as long for a fourth entry. Number 14, Luigi's Mansion 3. Speaking of which, the 6.5-year wait for a follow-up to Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, or Luigi's Mansion 2, was downright agonising, but developer Next Level Games certainly ensured that it was worth the wait in the end. An ideal threequel in just about every sense, Luigi's Mansion 3 is basically a grab bag of the best ideas from the first two games, while accompanied by some nifty new gameplay mechanics. Perhaps the most inspired addition is the introduction of the hilariously named Gooigi, an ectoplasmic doppelganger of Luigi who can help him during combat and in particular puzzle solving. Beyond simply switching to Gooigi to get the job done in solo play, a second player can also take control of him in local multiplayer, and anytime I can celebrate local multiplayer is a good time indeed. The gorgeous art direction accentuates the atmospheric haunted hotel setting, and better than both prior entries, Luigi's Mansion 3 nails a tricky balance of being just challenging enough, neither too easy nor brain-bustingly difficult. It was yet more evidence that Luigi and his many mansions are very popular when the game became one of the best-selling titles on the system, even if over time it slipped down to 17th overall. That's still very strong for a third game in what is still sort of viewed as a spin-off series. Number 13, Pokémon Legends Arceus. Pokémon Legends Arceus was quite frankly the kick up the Arceus that the Pokémon franchise so desperately needed, given that the Switch era of titles up to this point were flagrantly unambitious, to be kind. And the ones that came after were, well, worse. So in that sense, it's not surprising that Arceus is seen as the shining gem in the crown of Pokémon on Switch. Arceus boldly flips the script by serving as a prequel to Diamond and Pearl via timey-wimey shenanigans and offering up a number of open-world hubs for players to explore in pursuit of pocket monsters. There are some other neat innovations here, most notably the possibility of being attacked by wild Pokemon yourself, injecting some much-needed unpredictability into a series which has been reliably familiar to a fault over the years. Pokemon desperately needed to try something new, and while Arceus isn't a fully comprehensive reworking of the series, it is the most creative and playful entry in the franchise for a long time. So successful was the game that the Legends series is continuing with ZA, although it remains to be seen if it's a worthy follow-up or not. Taking Pokemon back into the present day at least means that Arceus will continue to stand out as one of the franchise's most interesting and worthwhile experiments. Number 12, Pikmin Pikmin 4. After a decade of waiting, having Pikmin 4 in my hands felt like a dream, frankly. And better yet, the game's quality also felt like a dream. Pikmin 4 retains the series' delightfully oddball style and tone while delivering more of the snappy, satisfying real-time strategy that the franchise has been built on. Sure, there are fair arguments to be made that it's a little too easy for its own good, but there's something to be said for a sequel that doesn't tinker too much with a winning gameplay loop. There are some solid value add-ins here though, such as the unerringly cute canine-like alien creature Ochi, yes, I would die for him, and the addictive tower defense-styled night expedition missions. Which of course come with one of the two new Pikmin types, the adorable glow Pikmin, yes, I would also die for them. Plus, bringing back the dungeons from Pikmin 2 added some much needed variety to the game's otherwise luscious worlds, each with their own degree of risk and challenge. An extremely polished and feature-rich feast of a game, Pikmin 4 is one of those deceptive ones. It seems simple, but there's far more here than you think, and you think you're picking it up for 30 minutes, but the next thing you know it's 1 AM and the only reason you stop playing is because the console runs out of battery. Yes, that happened to me. Number 11, Astral Chain. Astral Chain might be the sleeper hit of the console. Nobody saw it coming, and frankly, it seems like nobody has seen it since, despite being one of the most original and exciting offerings on the Switch. Another visually stunning actioner from the wizards at Platinum Games, Astral Chain is unabashedly influenced by both cyberpunk manga and anime. It's a game that bleeds atmosphere from every pore, all while offering up a unique and satisfying combat system in which players use the titular chain to summon creatures to fight alongside them. Beyond fisticuffs, Astral Chain is girded by enticing exploration, detective work, and puzzle solving, and while the game's narrative may often skirt on the fringes of nonsense, the vibe of the world and the characters within it is so enticing you likely will be fine with it. A winning blend of superficially familiar stylistic tropes and inventive combat, Astral Chain is one of the Switch's most distinctive original titles. Best of all, it actually outperformed Platinum Games' sales expectations, so what I'm saying is, where's my Astral Chain 2? Number 10, Super Mario Maker 2. Super Mario Maker is one of the most inventive, daring and unexpected Mario games of the last 10 years, the only problem being that it was stranded on the Wii U and the 3DS. But in 2019, Mario Maker 2 was released for the Switch and largely followed the lead of its magnificently premised predecessor, which allowed players to build their own side-scrolling Mario levels and share them online. One majorly welcome addition in Mario Maker 2 is the inclusion of assets from the wonderful Super Mario 3D World, which have been reworked to cohere with the game's 2.5D visual style. Beyond this, the sequel introduces a bevy of extra building tools to craft the most unhinged levels your mind can possibly conjure, though as with its predecessor, you need to actually be able to clear the level yourself before you can share it, which is a godsend, frankly. And that's without even mentioning the 100 plus level story mode or expanded multiplayer functionality, making Super Mario Maker 2 a must-own for Mario fans who consider themselves even slightly creative, or masochists who like taking on all the death trap levels that people create. Number 9, Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Though there's not a pure consensus on the matter, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is often held to be the best game in Monolith Soft's beloved RPG franchise, and it's for sure the least bloated of the series to date. Xenoblade 3 rocks a mind-boggling scale not unlike its predecessors, though doesn't feel quite so overwhelming, while offering up a mature and thoughtful climax to the story built up by the previous games. The streamlined combat is pure magic and feels considerably less of a chore than in Xenoblade Chronicles 2, which, given that you'll spend upwards of 60 hours playing through this thing on the lower end, is most certainly a relief. Xenoblade became a bit of a pillar of the Switch over the console's 8 years, having every game in the series ported to it, and Chronicles 3 pushes things to the limit. So much so that the only downer to consider is the game's rather lackluster performance on the console, given that the hardware was showing the strains of age well before the game's 2022 release. Fingers crossed that the beefier Switch 2 specs provide a much needed performance boost, but for the time being, if you're looking for an RPG on the Switch, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is at the top of the list. Number 8, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Though Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is, well, you could say, only an enhanced re-release of a game that launched on the ill-fated Wii U in 2014, any initial disappointment that the Switch didn't get, say, Mario Kart 9 is quickly offset by how much of a bulging, feature-rich package this new version undeniably is. Arriving with all of Mario Kart 8's DLC while making some welcome adjustments to Battle Mode, Deluxe isn't just the definitive iteration of Mario Kart 8, it's quite arguably the Mario Kart game to rule them all. With its tight controls controls, gorgeous graphics, killer music, and awesome character roster, Deluxe is an absolute joy to behold, and as is expected for the series, can be easily enjoyed by just about everyone who picks up a Joy-Con. Eschewing the gimmickry of prior entries, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe focuses on the fundamentals, with Nintendo seemingly well aware that having a full-fat AAA Mario Kart game on a handheld form factor is basically one of the coolest things you can do, so it's not really surprising that the series is now being positioned as the system seller for the Switch 2. I frankly cannot wait. Number 7, Super Mario Bros. Wonder. Super Mario Bros. Wonder is the first traditional side-scrolling Super Mario game since New Super Mario Bros. U way back in 2012, and splits the difference between paying tribute to what came before and pushing the type of game forward. Anyone who's played a side-scrolling game before, that is, everyone including your nan, will feel immediately at home, yet there are novel wrinkles aplenty. Not like your nan's wrinkles. Sorry, that was a weird one. I am, of course, though, talking about the new power-ups, one of which turns you into an elephant, and the Wonder Flower, which can cause unexpected effects throughout a given level. Whether playing solo, with a few pals locally, or even online, Super Mario Bros. Wonder is a platformer replete with the allure and creativity you'd expect from any mainline Mario game. Navigating the Flower Kingdom and uncovering its many bewildering sights feels so fun and giddily unpredictable, and again confirming Nintendo's penchant for tirelessly reinventing that which seems so firmly cemented. To call it a return to form for the 2D branch of Mario games seems like quite the understatement. Number 6, Metroid Dread. Metroid fans had to suffer through years and years of silence at worst, or at best, mediocre prequels like Other M, weird spin-offs like Federation Force, and remakes. And look, Samus Returns is a great game, but the Metroid series desperately needed something new for a long time. Well, Metroid Dread was a massive gulp of fresh air, a glorious return to the side-scrolling gameplay of classic 2D Metroid titles. Dread was also considerably more demanding than the mainstream-skewing Metroid Prime trilogy, its higher level of difficulty harkening back to the earlier games in the series, while serving up an intoxicatingly ominous, foreboding atmosphere. As tough as the game is, it always feels fair, largely due to responsive controls and generally intuitive combat mechanics, but it's the dread of the game's title which embeds itself deepest in the player's psyche. This is a genuinely pulse-quickening experience, especially with retrospect to the Emmy robots which pursue Samus throughout the game. If you thought Metroid Fusion was essentially survival horror, then Dread might as well be Silent Hill. Nintendo's old-school roll of the dice resulted in Dread becoming the best-selling Metroid game to date, and though the upcoming Prime 4 Beyond will likely dictate the future of the brand, we can only hope that Nintendo doesn't forget about Dread's achievements. What I'm saying is, if Prime 4 is also good, then we might get follow-ups to both, and both 2D and 3D Metroid fans will be eating good. And those of us who like both will be eating so good that they might need to go up a trouser size. Number 5, Animal Crossing New Horizons. Though Animal Crossing New Horizons was always going to be a hit, it's another game which benefited enormously from releasing at the onset of the pandemic in 2020. The new Animal Crossing provided sheltered-in-place players with some much-needed escapism to enjoy an exotic, colourful locale populated with adorable characters and lose themselves down a rabbit hole of never-ending tasks, all while socialising with their friends. It's little surprise then that New Horizons went on to sell an eye-watering 47 million copies worldwide, but even outside of its release context and years removed from pandemic restrictions, it's a tremendously charming and enjoyable game. The gentle nature of its gameplay loop, constantly fielding out things to do without overtly hassling the player, is delicately balanced, ensuring that there are few better games to relax with after a stressful day at work. New Horizons is about as zen as an experience you can get on the Switch. There have never been any official figures released, but if Nintendo were to reveal player data for the Switch, which is totally something they should do by the way, I'd put my well-earned bells down on Animal Crossing coming out as the most played game on the system. Number 4, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Now, if it wasn't already obvious, lists like this are totally subjective, but I think as we approach the top, in particular with this entry, is where the mudslinging could begin. It should be noted, whilst it may not be number 1 on the list of best Switch games, it's hard to argue that Breath of the Wild is not the most important Switch game. You might remember that it actually launched on the Wii U alongside the Switch. I mean, that's how I played it, but it marked a bold step forward for the series, thrusting it ambitiously into into truly open 3D territory for the first time. Many people remarked that sense of adventure reminded them of the original Zelda game, and it was kind of like Zelda was old and brand new all at once. The resulting game offered near limitless possibilities for traversing its teeming, beautiful world, but beyond that, players were largely invited to tackle the story however they wanted to the extent that you could even hurriedly fight Ganon after the Great Plateau tutorial, albeit probably in vain, but you could technically attempt it. Doing so is a huge disservice to the sheer vibrancy of the Hyrule presented here though. Staring at it from on high for the first time is a genuine moment for the franchise and indeed the Switch itself. Seriously, my jaw dropped open the first time when I realised that the tutorial area was the tiniest slice of the open world. Even with polarising elements like weapon durability, Breath of the Wild is all about giving players a massive sandbox populated with fascinating waypoints and just letting them go for it. Number 3, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Anytime new Nintendo hardware releases, owners start anticipating the release of a new Super Smash Bros. And in 2018, Nintendo delivered a new entry which well and truly lived up to its subtitle. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is the Smash game, a result of its refined gameplay mechanics, incredible visuals, amazing roster of almost 100 fighters, and hugely entertaining World of Light story mode. Using the Spirit system to ingeniously tweak one character to feel like another who's not even in the game made Smash Bros. Feel more like the video game museum of history than ever, except in this museum you're encouraged to punch every innocent bystander with a Falcon Punch! The primal thrill of Smash, however, will always be the multiplayer, especially if you can get a few friends in the same room and just start wailing away on each other as your favourite characters. Or you can all team up together to, I don't know, beat up all the Fire Emblem sword boys. I won't judge you. It's incredibly easy for just about anyone to pick up Ultimate and have a blast, but as with every prior entry, there's a hidden depth and complexity to its combat, which unfurls the more you play. Honestly, it's tough to imagine how much further Nintendo could take the franchise in the future because Ultimate feels staggeringly close to perfection. The next game's probably going to have to dial things back, so we should enjoy this while we can. Number 2, Super Mario Odyssey. If you could only play one Mario game on the Switch for some godforsaken reason, it would surely have to be Super Mario Odyssey. During that weird period of the new Super Mario Bros. Games, it started to feel like single-player 3D Mario was going to become a thing of the past, and then Odyssey came along and rose to the top of the pile. Pretty much the best-case scenario for a modern 3D Mario game, Odyssey continues the mainline series' reputation for constantly innovating with each new entry, best exemplified by the Cappy mechanic, whereby Mario's sentient hat allows him to possess enemies and objects alike. More than perhaps any other game in the series though, Odyssey is also a celebration of the Mario IP, peering back over its shoulder at the franchise's history, yet never in a way that feels overtly self-congratulatory or cynically nostalgia-baiting. With its open-ended platforming gameplay and mesmerising art direction, Mario has never looked or felt better to play, and it goes without saying that Nintendo will need to go above and beyond to top it on the Switch too, which, given the series' track record, they just might achieve it. For a franchise to be this overflowing with fun and interesting ideas is nothing short of miraculous. And number 1, The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. And so we arrive at the top spot, and I think many of you saw this coming. The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom had the totally unenviable task of following up one of the greatest Zelda games, and heck, one of the greatest games full stop, in Breath of the Wild. And whilst the purity of Breath of the Wild is still absolutely worth something, it was hard not to share in, or at least understand, the widespread point of view that Tears of the Kingdom almost made it irrelevant to play. Reusing and tweaking the map and then doubling the size of it with new floating sky islands and underground chasms, Tears makes Hyrule an even more diverse joy to explore, expanding the world in ways players never saw coming. The real star of the show, however, is the array of new mechanics such as Ultra Hand and Fuse, which allow players to manipulate the environment like never before. In lesser giant green-blue hands, they could be mere gimmicks, but here they quickly feel like second nature. Time and time again, players trying to navigate the world or solve a puzzle will wonder, can I do this weird thing? And the answer is almost always not just yes, but yes! In big, bold, flashing capital letters. If Breath of the Wild was freedom to explore, then Tears of the Kingdom is freedom to completely change how the exploration even works. And above all else, let us all remember Tears of the Kingdom as the Zelda game that finally made Ganon hot. Praise be. Which Nintendo Switch game would you put in the number 1 slot? Let us know down in the comments below, and let us know some games that didn't make this top 20 cut. We're doing a couple videos as we move towards the release of the Switch 2, so here's another video about Nintendo. This one is far less positive. In the meantime, thanks for watching, I've been Sai, and have a good week.